welcome to the next edition of ReGen Ag Chat. This is the third in our series on identity. My name is Liz Genever.
And I'm Nic Renison.
So on our third instalment, we are speaking to Peter Craven, who is Head of Agriculture for Natural England. When I first met Peter, he was a mainly potato farmer from East Lincolnshire. So it's quite interesting that he's moved from that job to the job he's now in, and we'll talk about that within the podcast. And again, that's how it links into identity and how he's shifted his sort of thoughts about that, even though he did say he still thinks himself of a farmer, so I should not be judgmental about how he identifies. What was your main point from our chat with Peter, Nic?
I love this chat. It's probably one of my very favourites. I loved he was very honest, and as someone who has spent over a decade trying to get on with my dad, I think the whole family dynamic thing is really interesting. And asking yourself, are you happy doing what you're doing, or are you just doing what everyone else wants you to do? I think I really enjoyed his honesty, and also his Nuffield that he did. It was all about how looking at really big family businesses and how they work. And he went to one family business, I can't think where it was, maybe New Zealand, and they said that they can't afford not to get on. And I thought that was really interesting, and it was putting that work, the groundwork in to make sure that everyone is happy, which then links to him talking about the family charter, which he spent quite a lot of time within his Nuffield kind of developing. So a really good chat. What did you think?
And I think it was the fact of those sort of steps again within his Nuffield, which is the idea that it starts with a profitable business, doesn't it? Celebrating the people, and then that the family and that making decisions together is key. And so that's where his family charter comes in. But I think what you also have to recognise is that probably if he had some of the skills that he'd identified through his Nuffield probably 10 years earlier, like he probably still would be farming. That's the bit that's interesting. And that Junie's currently in the role he's doing, but we're trying to convince him that he's got so much to share, hasn't he? That I think he is writing a book and doing some courses on this, and actually, especially in this time of farm admin and getting everybody's partnership sorted, this is the perfect time to be asking these more challenging questions rather than just papering over the cracks again.
But he'll be working with farming families all the time, and I think it's such he'll go to work every day with the knowledge of how farming families can be and how they very often are, and I think it's really good to have come from that position, so you've got an understanding, because it's tricky. Yeah,
and recognising that until you've got some of that, well, as he said, until you've got some of that, the dull stuff sorted, the business, the partnership agreement, all of that, people's headspace isn't there to then focus on nature and doing more exciting things, is it? That's the reality.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. Yeah. On that note, we shall hand you over.
So, Peter, thank you very much for taking this time out of your day to talk to Liz and I. Can we start at the very beginning? So can you just tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up, your thoughts as a tiddler?
Okay, tiddler. Okay, so I was born into a farming family in South Lincolnshire, so that was between Boston and Spalding. That was a vegetable farming family, so we were growing lots of brassicas, so cauliflowers, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels. My father specialised in onions, and then sort of our generation, or my generation, which was myself and my brother, we had both gone to Y College, studied agribusiness management. My brother 3 years in front of me, and we came onto the farm, and we're trying to spin the wheels, learnt lots at college, and started sort of critiquing and criticizing, or trying to make things better, if you like. And so we specialized in potatoes. Pretty easy, really, that conversation, because the cost of production on onions at the time was £120 a tonne, and we were getting £80 a tonne, and we'd had that for 2 years, and we needed to invest. And so where do you go with that? So we specialised in potatoes. We built some reservoirs, and we tried to grow that sort of Instagrammable potatoes, so that perfect skin finish, perfect shape, size, and everything to go to Marks and Spencer. So that was really what we did, and that was going really well.
And at that point, you really wanted to farm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was my life. That's what I did. You're sort of brought up in that sort of way of life, and so I didn't know anything else. So my father did say, I remember him sort of having a conversation around, you can do whatever you're like, whatever you're interested in, whether it's a doctor or whatever you want to do. He said, I'll be 100% behind whatever you choose. But there was this sort of ... and at the same time, I've done all this for there was sort of this sort of unspoken, I've done this for you and it'll be yours one day sort of thing. And so I was very interested in everything we were doing. It's all very and we were doing a good job. So it was a profitable, interesting, exciting. We were doing all of that alongside nature. So from the very start, we were leaf farmers and took a real pride. I've got it in my lapel now, a little leaf badge. But I took a great pride in sort of farming alongside nature. It was something that our customers liked to come and see, and we'd bring Marks and Spencer out and they'd be just amazed at what we were doing. But that was sort of buffering all of our watercourses, and creating even reservoirs where we would have scrapes and interesting, have an island, have dabbling areas, having areas that as the water went down, it held water back for birds, but just doing things a little bit differently, because at the end of the day, it's where we lived. We wanted it to be nice, and nice for nature, and it was really who we were. So we put a lot of hedges in. So we borrowed an old raspberry planter off a neighbour, and planted about 7 kilometres of hedge, of which we then went into 2 HLS schemes, sort of 10-year higher level stewardship schemes, 10-year back-to-back, so sort of 20 years in those schemes, and then managed to get a grant at the end of it to lay those hedges. And those hedges will now be incredible for the next 50 years. And so you can kind of forget how good things are. I mean, people would come to the farm and say, I've never seen 200 sparrows. And you think, well, 200 sparrows doesn't sound that amazing because we've got loads of sparrows. But to people that say, no, this is something special, or you'd have grey partridge running around and yellowhammer, all these birds that we were attracting was just, it was lovely.
And what kind of scale was it at? Was it a big farm, or in those? What? Yeah,
so we would be farming over 1,000 acres. We were growing a lot of spuds, so 10,000 tons of spuds that we were storing. So 400-500 acres of spuds, and we were trying to do the very best job to attract the very best margin and get the very best returns, but it wasn't at the cost of nature, if you like. So it didn't have to be. And you can pretty much make the numbers do whatever you want. So, I mean, I could show you numbers that would show, we're more profitable not to be growing on the edges of the field where you're putting the same seed rates on the same inputs, and you're doing well if you break even on the margins. So why aren't we doing something more productive with those margins? And so that's absolutely what we did. And so it was just sort of making the most out of what we've got and the most productive out of our landscape, if you like. And some bits was for food and some bits was for nature. The tricky is then when you go to rent land, and you want to try and do the same things and you're competing with others that aren't, and so that's where you get a bit of conflict. But yeah, I mean, we had some difficult conversations sometimes to say, look, we want to do the right thing here, but we can't farm up to the edges of the field, and we don't want to do that. So can we do something different? Can we negotiate a way around that? And so we certainly managed that in places. So yeah.
And knowing that bit of the world a bit, but in terms that's all grade 1, grade 2 land you're working on.
Yeah, it would be your very best stuff. So some people might joke you could pull a hawthorn hedge across it and it would be worked. But it was, you say boys' land. I mean, we still had a lot of fun and games sometimes getting stuff in and stuff out. But it was what we would call, a lot of it was double crop veg land. So we could put plant a crop of cauliflowers on the 10th of March, and we could put another crop of cauliflowers or broccoli and have that out, put it in July time and have it out before Christmas. So it was that sort of highly fertile, sort of silt productive land. So yeah, it was perfect for getting your Instagrammable potato.
But I'm just thinking, because in that situation, people, I suppose your point about sort of your neighbours or your people who you're going up against for land. Sorry. So they would be going, why the hell are you putting a margin on this sort of land? Like, what do you mean? So did you had a lot of, you used the phrase difficult conversations, but I'm guessing there was a lot of conversations which involved what the hell are you doing with decent land? Or am I assuming?
I mean, there are rules and regulations as well that should be adhered to. So there's arthropod zones. There's certain things you can and cannot do, and so I was I would fill in all. I did all the auditing. So we were red tractor, nurture, leaf, and field to fork, and all of those assurance schemes. And I was also responsible for health and safety. And so, yeah, we want to do things right. And it's easier to tell the truth when you're doing things right than when you're not. So that was just how we were. And some of these products you can't put near watercourses. And so if you're required by regulation not to go too close, or to maintain a buffer strip or a buffer zone, then that's what you should do.
So, sorry, just to clarify, so it wasn't necessarily they were not wanting to have the margin, they were necessarily producing for customers who didn't have that requirement. I know some of it is in terms of good agricultural environmental condition, but some of your leaf rules would have been on top of what they would normally be doing.
Yeah, so as for leaf rules, a certain percentage of what you farmed was in a sort of a nature friendly way, but yeah, we couldn't do everything perfectly, if you like, how we'd want on our own farm on other people's land, because at the end of the day, if somebody's going to pay £1,000 an acre to rent land, they want it up to the edge, and the bit around the outside is the biggest part of the field. Yeah, but you then got to choose. Well, we can turn on that land. We don't have to farm it up to the edge. We can use it for other things, and you never get the same quality off a headland as you do in the field. So you can soon talk your way out of planting headlands, if you like.
I was going to change tact a bit now. I'm just going to go quite somber. So can we talk about family dynamics? Family, I was going to say breakdown, but that's quite family business breakdown, but that's quite hard. Sounds a bit drastic. But I left my family business because I just couldn't get on with my dad. I tried for 10 years, and we get on fine now, but I haven't got that kind of father-daughter relationship. It's like, it's kind of it's sometimes it's quite tricky, because I think he thought of me as a worker and I thought of him as the boss, but that was our situation. But can you just tell us about your decision to do your Nuffield and realizing that things were not maybe going as well at home with the family dynamics?
Yeah, I think if we're honest with ourselves, every family has an issue. There's not one that doesn't. And just when you get it right, the next generation come along and there's still another issue. So it's a constant, a sort of a timeless problem, if you like. And so we all see this, we all experience it. And then as we get to winter time and we have more time to come together, if you like, in more relaxed atmospheres, people start to talk about some of this stuff. And certainly it was something that I would share and I would hear with others over the winter. So I knew pretty much everybody's having these problems. And what really happens is the decision-making part slows down. And so when communication stops, decision-making or good decision-making stops. And then that's what causes issues. We've got opportunities in every direction if you want to grab them. But they all rely on being able to make a decision together. And so that means you've got to come together. And if that doesn't work or it's not working, then really that business starts to stagnate. And as we all know, you've nearly got to paddle. You've got to keep paddling harder just to stand still almost at times, it feels like. And so, you really need to be all pulling in the same direction. So where did it start was probably your question. I went on a worshipful company of farmers course back in 2018, and this really shook me in a good way. They put you together. They sort of cherry pick a group of different people, and I don't mean cherry pick just picking the best, but they pick a different group of people, so not all the same, and that's sort of this cohort that holds each other to high account, if you like. And I remember it was quite humbling. You go in and you think you're pretty good at what you do, and then you quite quickly realise that you could do an awful lot better. And you start hearing what other people are up to, and this really sort of open community that it created, and this sort of open dialogue. We met some really interesting people. They challenged. We were talking, I remember one day, about business objectives. That's a comfortable topic for people to talk about. Business. Personal objectives was the next day. That was a lot more difficult. What do you want? What are you doing this for? Why are you doing it? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for your family? What do you want for your business? What do you want? And it's like, Christ, I've never thought about that before. And I remember a guy, Ryan, on our course. He jumped up in front of me and he banged down what he wanted. And this was his personal objective. Bang, 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 bang. Another 7 points. He'd got it all worked out. And I was so enthralled by this guy that knew what he wanted. And I just remember thinking, I remember ringing home and ringing my wife and saying, I don't know what's going on anymore. I'm in a bit of a muddle here. So that was really good. And and it was a guy called Sean Rickard. He spoke at the Norfolk Farming Conference last week. He was brilliant. I don't know if you ever met him, but he's quite provocative. He likes to challenge. He likes to poke and prod, and it's his way of working. And I remember him. I never met Napoleon, but if I had, I could imagine he'd be like him. And he was sort of marching up and down the room and sort of shaking his hand at us, going, "You lot have got to wake up. There's change coming, and you can't see it. You're all half asleep." And he gave this sort of crazy figure at the time. He said 60,000 UK farmers are going out of business in the next 7 years. And you can't even see it coming. And I just remember thinking, who is this guy? What is he talking about? I mean, what if he's half right? These numbers are alarming. And so I guess that woke me from a deep sleep of bumbling along in my own sort of world, living in between hedge lines, thinking I'm doing a pretty good job. And here's this guy really now poking me to want to know more. And I remember coming out of that course 2018, and I thought, I want to do more. I've got to do more. I put my name down for Oxford Farming Conference, Emerging Leaders, of which where I met Liz for the first time. But I put my name down for the NFU Potato Policy Group as a result of that, just to see if I could get on and get involved in more. I put my name down for Enough Field as a result of that, to see if I could do more, learn more. But it really did. And it was him. And I saw him last week and I said, "You've changed my life," to Sean Rickard, which I don't think he had appreciated, but he really did wake me from a deep sleep.
Wowzers. Because Liz, you did that as well, didn't you?
I think, because was that the management course or the Challenge of Rural Leadership course?
So I did the management course. So I'd studied agri-business management at college some 20 odd years ago. And when I'd rang up to see if I could get on this course, they'd said, "Well, just go and read your notes, Peter. You'll be all right. Just go and read your notes. Come back when you've forgotten everything." And I thought, well, I can't remember any of it anyway. But anyway, so I did ring 2 or 3 years later, and I said, "Look, I'm ready." So it was that course, yeah, because they do CRL, the Challenge of Rural Leadership, and they do the agri-business management course. And I was so struck with delivery that I joined it. So I'm now a member of the Worshipful Company of Farmers. And would you believe I'm on the education committee. I'm also captain of the shoot team at the minute. But would you believe I exercised my right? So as part of that, you get the freedom of the City of London. And as part of that, you get to exercise a right to walk or march sheep over London Bridge. So last year I did that with my children. And yes, and I can give you the top tip. If you're going to do that, do it in the morning, because in the afternoon, the pavement is quite slippy.
With sheep shit?
I didn't say that.
Okay. But I've done the CRL one, and we still meet up every year. And that, I think I did it in 2016, and it's such a powerful group of people. Like, we might not speak to one another for a year, but then you're back in that room, and as you say, it's the accountability. They know you at depth, don't they? Because they've seen you sort of do that through courses. Anyway, yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's warts and all things. So they see you. I mean, we were joking when we were on the course that they sort of break you down to then build you back up again. But any of the egos, all of that stuff was out the window. Everybody was sort of brought down to the same level, and we were all brought up together, and it was just lovely. We went to Adam Driver, one of our on our course 2 weekends ago. So and we include partners on those sort of get-togethers. But our WhatsApp group is buzzing every day, and this is sort of, I don't know how many years later. This will be 6-7 years later. That WhatsApp group from that worshipful company, of course, it's still very active. You want to know an answer to anything, you've got it by the end of the day. And if you haven't got the answer, you've got a link to somebody that knows the answer. So yeah, really powerful.
So that led you to then Nuffield, but Nuffield equally was exposed you to lots of different people, I suppose, and travel, and again broaden the horizons. Yeah,
totally. So we'd learnt about Jim Collins' Good to Great on the worshipful course, and getting the right people on the bus and getting the wrong people off the bus, and all of the sort of learnings from Jim Collins, which was really interesting. And so my sort of initial title had been, how do you go from good to great in a family farming business? But what I realized was the importance of family in that greatness part. So I went to see lots of good businesses, but the really great ones were the ones that were in sort of bringing the family in. And that's where I saw the greatness. And so in my Nuffield, I talk about knowing your numbers. There's sort of three levels, if you like. The first is knowing your numbers, so sort of running a professional business. The second sort of level up is your people, looking after your people, celebrating your people, doing whatever you can to empower your people, create that sense of belonging and motivate your people. But really this sort of higher upper echelons of greatness is really reserved for those that look after the family. And so family business success is business success plus family success. And I guess where I had been focused was on business success, head down, farm comes first. And that sort of family bit, you don't even almost have time to think about, but it's so important, and that being able to make decisions together, so important. And so I found out lots of really interesting things, and I went all the way around the world. Well, I went across the other side of the world to hear about something called a family charter, and then when I heard about this thing, it then sent me down a rabbit hole all over the place. What the hell is a family charter? Who has family charters? And everyone has them when you go looking for it. And in America, they like a constitution, so they call it a family constitution. The Germans do as well, constitution. But family charter, family constitution, or just a family plan. And what it does, we all have one of these things already, but they're in our heads. And what's in our heads might be different to our brothers, sisters, fathers, uncles in their heads. And so what this does is it gets it out onto paper. And so it's not a legal document, it's but a formal document. And it's something that family members sign up to. And it really addresses three questions, which is, or three sort of topics it covers, and it's all simple stuff when it's all explained to you. But it's number one: do we want to remain as a family and business? This is almost sort of precursor to the family charter. But do we want to remain as a family and business? If we do, number two: how are we going to do that? And you can make it as complicated or as simple as you like, but how are we going to do that? But ultimately also, if we can't get on, how are we going to do that? Because you can put up with all sorts of stuff for a while, if you can see a light at the end of the tunnel. And if it really things aren't, if that is the answer and you don't get on, then what does that look like? And are we going to grow this business over the next 10 years to split it? Are we going to find a way to buy one person out, or what are we going to do? So it's having a plan. So it's about having a plan. And then the third one is, who do we call family? So are we including stepchildren, adopted children? Are we including partners, wives, husbands, that are sort of sons, daughters-in-laws, all this sort of thing? Children, grandchildren, who are we including in these discussions? And that's really important part of a lot of this stuff, because what people don't know they make up, or they like to explore in their own heads and get these sort of conspiracy theories when you don't really know what's going on. And so having that clear, open, effective communication is really important in families. And so this is what I saw all over the place that I was traveling. Lots of key things, but it was around vision, it was around shared values, it was around ownership and accountability, roles and responsibilities. But the shared values, really important stuff.
Can you give us some examples of some families you met?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most complicated was where I met a guy called Chris Korhiki in New Zealand. I mean, in the Maori culture, they have to send the land down like in the French structure, where equally to each child on death. So everybody has to have an equal share, and so there was a lot of land in this. They call them multi-land trusts. But he was managing land for 297 families. And so how do you think about getting on with your brother, or your sister, or your mother or father? How do you get on with nearly 300 families get on? And he was explaining this importance of listening so that people feel heard and understood. And so this communication part, really important, and at the heart of it. But what did it look like for their business? I mean, there was $1 billion business. This wasn't a business that was not going anywhere because of the size of the ownership part. They brought themselves together in an organized manner to create some incredible outcomes, having shared values, having a sort of a direction. So it was incredible.
And going back to so in terms of making that initial family charter, so do the people tend to bring in a facilitator, or they just have a list of questions and power through them?
So it was a farm. I'd heard the name, but you don't really pick it up of what it was. And I was with a guy in the South Island of Canterbury Plains in New Zealand, where I first saw it. And he said this phrase that you can. I mean, they were running incredible businesses. He'd got over 10,000 acres he was farming. He got 5 children. And I said, what does that look like in the future? Is that he got a third share in dairy holdings? It was 50,000 dairy cows. They got incredible business. They got flour mills and you name it, they were up to it. And I said, what does that look like for your children? Are you going to give them a piece each, or with different areas? How does it work? He said, we're not splitting this thing up. We've created something that's huge, efficient. We split it up. We'd be going back 10 years. I said, well, how do you manage that? And that's when he got this family charter out. And he said, this is what we use to protect. Well, I mean, he said, protect ourselves from ourselves. And he said, you can have the best numbers in the world, but if your family can't get along, then it's all been for nothing. And so that really was my penny drop moment of my Nuffield of wow. And then when I looked at it, it was driven by the banks over there. So the banks weren't worried. The businesses were so borrowed at the bank. They'd had incredible growth. They were lending up to 65% of the value of the asset. And as land prices or land values had risen, they'd borrowed against it. And 65% borrowed, and the banks weren't worried about the numbers. They got spreadsheets auto-populating before the tractors back to the yard. They were all over budgeting cash flows. I mean, to say they knew their numbers was an understatement. They got all these systems in place of what was delivered, what was applied. It was just stuff it was next level stuff. But the banks were worried about the family getting on, not the numbers. And so the weakest part is now, actually, if Bob and Jim don't get on, what does that look like for our numbers? I mean, these businesses were brilliantly run. And then as you get into bigger organizations where you could have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 employees, then it's a big problem if the family don't get on, because it doesn't just affect them. And so I saw it from right down to single farming businesses in New Zealand. And then when I get home, then of course you start asking the right questions. There's farming businesses in this country with family charters. I'd never heard of it before. Nobody talks about it. But it's really just a plan. So it's a plan. And there's a bit of a structure. You can put as much in or as little as you want, but it's really a roadmap for family and business. So what are you going to fall out over? What do we need to talk about? So how do we make decisions? How do we make decisions around here? Does one person? Or do we do it collectively? Do we do it by consensus? I mean, how does it work? And I met a farming family. The husband was busy working when I arrived. His wife said he was working 18 hours a day, and she said, she was telling me about the story about decision making on their farm, and she said, I just want to see him a little bit more. And I've gone to the father-in-law to say, can we get a help on a Saturday morning just for 3 or 4 hours, and then my husband can spend some time with the kids. And he said, no, we can't afford that. We haven't got any money for that. And then, of course, the field comes up next door for sale, and he's gone and bought it before he's even told any of the rest of the people in the family. So one day they've got no money, and she hasn't got money to see her husband, and yet the next day they're buying another field and making their whole scenario even more complicated. So it's clarity, bringing clarity.
And I suppose it's come even more to a head, hasn't it, with the change in inheritance tax rules? I'm just thinking, actually, quite a lot of the pain that a lot of farming families is going through is this lack of clarity between how is it is that, and certainly that's what the challenge at home is, that we were working to a different set of rules, and now the rules have changed, which is also partly it, but also the questions about who makes decisions, how does it. We don't have a clear path for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem, and it's a problem where you've now got generations working together. So previously, you'd at 65, somebody would hang their boots up, and they probably would have a hip that didn't work anymore, and they weren't jumping on and off tractors. But you've got people running marathons, and they're 85-year-olds running marathons and things. So times have changed. Modern science has allowed generations to do what they do for longer. And so they've now got to come together and get along together, and that causes friction. And so understanding, appreciating, and navigating that is important. I saw another guy in America. I've said it to others, but they wouldn't come to a meeting without two solutions each. So rather than Grandpa just having the casting vote and it's my way, I've seen it, I've seen this 100 times before, this is the only way that works. Even he had to come in the room with two solutions, and it just changed the whole mindset. So maybe the teenager has got a really good, valid idea that Grandpa's now willing to listen to, because he's now, even in his own mind, says, well, there's more than one way to skin this cat, even in my own head. So now it just sort of opens up that mindset. So there's lots of different ways to achieve the same result and work together. So that's certainly a big issue, and this whole identity part of you sort of hang your boots up. You're expected to hang your boots up at a certain age and step aside. Well, this is who I am. This is what I do. I am a farmer. I've always been a farmer, and I will always be a farmer. And I want to keep being a farmer and be interested. But it's understanding how you can work together and what you're trying to achieve. So this family charter puts a bit of clarity around the direction. What do we want? What are our shared values? So we've all got different values, but there will be ones that we can agree on. So we might agree that hard work is something that's really important, but we might disagree on other things. But what can we agree on? And then how do we use that to create shared goals and a sort of shared purpose going forwards?
So you returned from your travels and you went into deepest, darkest Lincolnshire and said, right, we're going to have a family charter. What was the reaction?
So I didn't say that because that would have been wrong to just come and drop that. But I'm thinking, what is it? How does it work? How could it work? And what needed to happen? And I guess what was the turning point for me was when I took a business mentor on. The government do these things called Be the Best Business, a mentorship scheme. And I had this guy, you had him for 12 months. You had one session a month for 12 months, 3-hour session. And in the January session, first question, what's your personal objectives? And I thought, oh, bloody hell, I've had that a year ago. This was a year after that worshipful thing. And I said, I had that on this Worshipful Company of Farmers course, the same question. He said, brilliant. He said, you've had a year to think about it. Tell me the answer. I said, I can't tell you. I don't know. And then we had 3 hours bumbling around. He wouldn't ask me any other questions until I'd answered his one question. And the February meeting had another 3 hours. The March meeting, we had another 3 hours. We're only on one question so far. So we've had 9 hours of professional mentorship with one question. And it was awful. And I spent day and night thinking about what do I want? And anyway, in the April meeting, I took off this mask that I was wearing on my face, and it had been welded to my face, and I'd hidden it from everyone. And I pulled it off. It was glued to my face. And I said, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. And I don't know whether I'd even answered this question then, but I'd answered a question in my head that something wasn't right and had to change. And so that then led to some conversations, which then led to me stepping back from the farming business. So, and I can't go into much more details, or I shouldn't do. But you've got to make. Did you
know that was the answer? But did you know that was the reason, and you just thought, I can't possibly say that, or did you have to work through it to get to that?
No. So I tried to get a facilitator to help with that, and we did have a bit of help, but ultimately it's very easy for people to say, and I hear this lots, we pay for professional advice, we're paying too much for all these professional fees already, we don't want to pay for any more professional advice. And so, well, I'll pay for it then. No, we don't want that. I mean, this is quite a personal thing for people to admit. They've got faults, and this is difficult stuff to unpack. And And so, and this is the same for everyone. And so some of this family charter stuff is a lot of reflection about what you actually want and why you're doing it. And I mean, I've asked, you ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. I've asked everybody I met why they're doing what they're doing. And they all come back with all these different things. Flexibility, passion, I enjoy it. But you ask them 5 times why. Yeah, but why are you doing it? Why are you really doing it? Why are you changing irrigators on a Sunday evening at 10 o'clock at night? Why? And in the end, they're struggling for an answer. And I've had lots of people ring me up, send me emails later on, but they all pretty much, and this is business owners now, business owners would say, we want our family, they're all the same 3 things. We want our family to be happy, to get along, and to do well. And whatever those things mean, but they were all around, and you can argue what's happiness, what's good, but it was around family happiness, family getting along, and family doing well. So that's what everybody wanted to see. And so that's a great place to put at the start of your family charter is the why. But really, what's the purpose for in your family? What are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because the next time we start to bash our heads and argue, hang on a minute, why are we doing this? Because we want to be happy, we want to get along, we want to do well. So this isn't helping. I mean, this shared values is all part of it. I mean, there's a guy in America, he had quite an abrupt way of doing it, but he had a pink graffiti can, and he'd go and spray 10% on their workshop door in pink paint, and they'd have to all walk in this door, in and out the door, walk by the door, and it's a beautiful old, they've got this picture of this beautiful old door with this pink graffiti on, but it was to get everybody to focus on, and the 10% for them is we want to have 10% more yield. We want to save 10% on our inputs. We're going to take 10% less drawings. They were looking at what they could do on this farm, and there was a load of things associated with this 10% that they'd set up. And he told me that one day the 2 of the boys are out outside brawling, fighting, and the wife had shouted out the window, "What's this got to do with 10%?" And it's like, and it hadn't, and it's suddenly just bringing everybody, even Grandpa that looked and said, "You've defaced my beautiful workshop door." Even he was now thinking about this 10%, and it was all they got in their heads, and it created this shared value or this shared sort of purpose direction for that business. And there's different tricks of how you do it, but you've got to have an idea. I met this guy, he was president of the Ritz-Carlton. He was all about vision, direction. He said you can't go anywhere. You can't take anybody anywhere if you don't know where you're going. And it's as simple as that. You can't, whether they're family members, whether they're in the business, nobody will follow you anywhere if they don't know where you're going. So you've got to be clear about that.
It's interesting because I know you said you've got some examples, but I don't think there's many examples in the beef and sheep world where we can go and see that or talk about it. Possibly the Nellises that we talk about quite a lot. But it's also terminology that we don't often use, isn't it? And I know some of these are words that people will be less familiar with, but it's treating, a lot of this is business chat and treating them as businesses, but with this massive chunk of person in it, or people, and how you look after them.
There's a massive chunk of person that it starts with, but then it gets into the business governance stuff. So the person bit at the start is also appreciating the family history. So what's happened, what's gone before us to get us to where we are today. So there have been blood, sweat and tears gone into this business. People have gone without to create where we are today. That needs recording, it needs appreciating, it needs respecting, so that others, we haven't just got this through luck, actually. We've worked bloody hard for this and we don't want to screw it up. So putting that in your document at the very start is something that they all have. to sort of ground everybody. But then, what do we want? What do we want for our family? What are we really trying to achieve? And families will have an idea of what they're wanting to do. And you can start off with what we don't want, if to start eliminating what we do want. So we don't want this farm to split up. Right, that's a good place to start. So it's just having a conversation and sort of almost asking easier questions at the start. Is actually, what do we enjoy about this? What makes us happy on this farm? What are our good memories here? To just start aligning people to what's going well. You have to unpack some of the baggage as well. But yeah, then it quite quickly comes on to roles and responsibilities. I mean, I met a business. It was 7 brothers, 2 sisters, and 7 next generation. One of the biggest potato farmers in New Zealand, that was. But how do they get on? He said we can't afford not to get on. We said we've got to have clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and then this accountability part to give people, trust people to, or empower them to do with these roles. But then this idea of do what you say and say what you do. If that's your role, you've got to do it, and you've got to come back and tell us what's going on with it and reporting it in. And so it's just being a little bit more professional about what's going on. So none of this is rocket science, and you can call it having a plan. But we've got to have a plan of where we're going. So what does this business look like? So where are we going to be in 30 years' time? Business, family, ownership. What's that going to look? What's it look like today? What's it look like in 30 years' time? Just to start thinking about these things.
And I suppose, Nick, the bit, and you went on it, which is the roots. The AHDB ranching for profit. So that's Roots to Resilience would started to talk about some of this, but maybe not so much on the family. Generally people, wasn't it? But
it was quite family, having that family, I can't think what they called it, but just a sentence, your kind of mission statement, I think it was. But it was all about kind of getting everyone in the room, seeing everyone's point of view. So it's very similar, actually, to what you're kind of talking about. Yeah, but it's just goes. It's so often not talked about. It's like the elephant in the room, isn't it, within agriculture, and particularly now with the inheritance tax. It's a conversation which it's just so tricky.
And I suppose what's interesting with your question, or you asked your statement of "I'm not happy," which is in some of the meetings Nick and I do, which is that's the question we ask. Because it's the stoicism, isn't it? You just keep getting on. And actually there can be more to just this. And it's getting people to reflect. And it's not, I suppose, and that was part why I'm interested in that your decision to do something else is a rare one, isn't it? But why should it be rare?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a hard decision, don't get me wrong. And you only walk this way once, and so you've got a choice. Everyone's got a choice. You either put up with it or you get on. But I spoke to somebody. There was 2 brothers farming. What this does is it allows people to talk about what they actually would like to do. And because not everybody wants to do this, I spoke to so in one family I spoke with. There's a brother that wanted to retire. One wanted to farm, one wanted to retire. And it didn't actually happen in the end because the mother was very controlling and she didn't want to let it happen. She wanted to keep everybody together. And so that wasn't allowed. But they had this conversation, which was, could I go and do something different? And And in that situation, the mother said no. And so, I mean, what it does, if you've got somebody that wants to be a film star or something, or wants to do something, doesn't want to milk cows, or doesn't want to do this, wants to do something else, then they should be able to do that, or at least be able to say that. And so what this was doing, and this one in New Zealand, there was 5 children. Only one was in the business at the time. The others are all out working in other industries. It hadn't tied the people to the business because there was clarity in what that business was doing. And they had set it up in a way that said, we want to support our family to be the best that they can be. And if that was to be a ballerina, then that's what they wanted to do. And so it doesn't mean that the farm has to be your life, and there's other ways. And so when you start thinking of who's in this circle that is the business, who's in this circle that's a family, and where do they overlap, and then where does this ownership part overlap as well? But yeah, I mean, I met there's a big family in Ireland, the Musgraves. I think they've got 90 odd family members in their family charter. They feed 1 in 3 people in Ireland. They're like the co-op in Ireland, but they're a big family business. It's incredible to see how they've sort of aligned the family and still being able to get on as a business, but with 90 odd family members in it. It's.
So do you have a sliding doors moment where if you hadn't in 2018 gone on that course, met those people, do you think you could still now be farming away at home? And
yeah, so I think so the answer to that question is no, I don't think I could. So my question is, could I have remained as a family and business together? I don't think the answer is really no there for me. But what it would have done is allowed a conversation around how we're going to do that. And really how we're going to do that. And the frustration of not having that conversation could have been avoided. And so I do believe that if I'd known some of that stuff earlier, we could have put things in place to avoid some of the outcomes and the unintended consequences that have happened. And so it just comes down to having a plan and being able to talk about your thoughts openly. So in this thing, my Nuffield, you said you had a look at it, but there was a part about trust. So the bit that you're trying to get to, the Holy Grail, is trust in a family. So that's what breaks down. And to get the trust, you have to have honesty, openness, and fairness. And so if there isn't the honesty, there isn't the openness, and that fairness part aren't all there, then you'll never get the trust. And it's also this other bit I talked about in my Nuffield was legacy. What are you trying to leave behind? Because I've met lots of trails of destruction that have been where things haven't been sort of left well. And when you start to you challenge somebody to think, what do you want people? Stephen Covey said, starting with the end in mind, but what will they say at your funeral? How will your friends talk about you? How will your family talk about you? How will you want them to talk about you? I met a family, 5 children, and the mother she had got 5 wills. 1 written for each of the family members, and when she died in the bureau, they found a 6th will that left it all to 1. And so while they were alive, they all got on really well because they all thought they were going to be the winner. And then it all went to 1, and then there's enormous that just ruined that family forever. And you think, well, is that the legacy I really want to leave? And so it is.
That's dreadful. Flipping out.
She loved a bit of drama, transpires, and believed in the afterlife. So she was watching down on it all.
There's a lot of this stuff can be. They say surprises are great things as long as they're not, but not in a will.
So what are you doing right now? What's your day job now?
So my day job now is with Natural England. So I joined Natural England in beginning of September. So I think I just can't believe how quickly it's all gone. Felt like 3 months, but it's getting nearer 6 months, I think now. Incredible place, incredible people, so much going on. Really interesting, exciting, challenging times we're in. And so, getting my head around it all it's been blowing my brains, if I'm honest. There's just such a breadth of to get up to speed on, and there's so much going on. But yeah, really exciting.
Oh. Well, I'm just.
And the other question: are you happy?
Oh yes.
Do I look happy? I don't know.
You look really miserable. No, you look actually annoyingly happy.
So I would say,
don't you think?
I would say I'm happy, but that's not good because I'm still, I still think it's really weird, this whole idea of identity and farming, and I guess that's really something I struggled with when I stepped back. And I was with NIAB in Cambridge and Potato Research when I stepped back from the farm, and I really struggled with this idea of who am I, and I still think of myself as a farmer, just in a different way, and so I don't. I'm not a practicing practitioner, but it doesn't mean that I'm not passionate about farming, farmers, and our industry. I absolutely am, and this whole bit of education and sort of raising the bar for everyone, and the importance of education, the importance of the worshipful courses. Worshipful Company of Farmers, the importance of Nuffield, and the other everything else that goes on around sort of professional development. So that was, it's a big thing that came up when I was traveling. Lots of words kept coming back, but this continuous learning. Those great people, great businesses, they're all continually learning. And this idea of getting out of your hedge line and getting and seeing and engaging. Is so important.
Thank you. Really interesting. The things I've taken from it is that this support network, which means through your worshipful company group, through your business mentor, through your Nuffield, do you mean it's not no man is an island, is it? So you've used a lot of support as well, and recognised that you needed support, which I think is a really important part of it.
Yeah, I'm another person that really helped me, Tony Evans from Anderson's. He was my Nuffield mentor, and he was certainly a really good person to talk to when I was sort of in my darkest days, if you like, of what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What should I do? Because it has been quite a sort of a difficult process, but this family charter thing, I did a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of Ben Eagle. He was asking me a lot of questions, and the microphone went down at the end. He said, "Peter, you know what you've got to do? You've got to do a course." And so he challenged me. I said, "Well, will you keep me accountable?" Anyway, I wrote a course, and I have written a course on how to do this, and how people can do it for themselves to a greater degree, with minimal input from a professional, somebody that's going to charge you to come in and sit, because a lot of this stuff takes time. And as I said, it took me a year of thinking about what do I want. It took me a guy prodding me every month for 4 months. What do I want? What am I doing this for? And so you can't have somebody just facilitate. You've got to almost be introduced to the idea and then let that percolate and sow the seed. And so I've written this course that takes people on that journey. Doesn't give them all the information, and it's a slow start, but to try and understand what's important, why they're doing it as a family. This is the whole family. And it all starts very family focused at the start, before it then moves on to as much or as little as the nitty gritty as you want to get into. But so that's something that I'm just trialing at the moment with a couple of families going through the process, trying to polish it and improve it. But it's so that's still early days. I've written a book, but I don't like what I've written, so I daren't let it out there yet. I reread the first chapter and I don't like it, so I've rewritten that, and you just think, ooh. So I don't know. I thought it was a good idea telling people I've written a book, because then it keeps me accountable. And now people are coming up, where's this book you said you've written? And I was like, oh God. But there's so much going on. Life is so busy. And at the minute, as you'll have seen, with the spending review and government, and we've got EIP targets, we've got lots to achieve. The asks on farmers are immense, and that sort of pressure rising that you talked about, Liz, earlier. But we've lost our BPS payments, but we've got sort of rising input costs, volatile markets, labour shortages. We've got all of these other stuff sort of stacking up and up. And that pressure really is rising. And that's sort of all on top of the family stuff that no one's talking about. We're all keeping it hidden. We're all getting on. And so it's hard. It's getting hard. And this idea, I call it, my analogy is a cake.
Yes, I read about this in the report.
Okay, well, there's a bit about cake, but you can have, I think when there's plenty of cream in the job, you can cover up a multitude of sins, but the cracks are there in these families, and unless you work on them, the cracks will always be there, and you can smooth it over in times of plenty, because there's plenty and we don't need to address this stuff. But as it becomes less cream, we've got to really start addressing some of these family issues and working out what it is we really want, what we're trying to achieve here, and how we're going to do it. And it is as simple as that. And okay, that's difficult conversations, that's stuff we don't normally talk about, but it can be as simple as that for a start.
And I think that the bit you raise as well, which is that I'm all right at writing a plan, it's then keeping it consistent and dealing with that fluctuations. It's also checking in it, and how do you then construct the meetings or all of that to then go alongside it. But anyway, let's get the plan first before we get too carried away with what else is going to happen afterwards.
Yeah, and you don't have to get everything right at the start. Families change, stuff changes all the time. And so just get a little bit that's right for a start, and then worry about some of the other stuff afterwards. But just getting a dialogue going is hard. We've got no time. There's never any time.
Well, but it's about prioritisation, I suppose, and we've at the farm at home, we've spent a lot of time talking to solicitors and all sorts of stuff about the inheritance tax, which we've made time for because it's important. So things can shift around, can't they?
Yeah, and a lot of people I've spoken to and especially on this family chart stuff, is work out what on earth you want first before you bring those others into the room. So what do we actually want? Where are we trying to get to first? And then see how do we best do it? Otherwise, you just end up going down alleyways that you would never necessarily go down for the wrong reasons, or you can do. So actually, do we know what we actually were trying to achieve here? And then get them in to say how best to do it. For tax.
And the other thing I took as well from the conversation was getting off the farm, getting a different perspective. And so that could be nothing, it could be courses, it could be, but it's getting a wider viewpoint. And then, well, you've already said it, which is I think you're going to be or you can be whoever you want. But I went to a course with Elaine Froese, who's the Canadian succession type person, or transition, actually, she talks about. So this idea of increasing communication on farm. So maybe that's your UK role in the future. But you've already got a course.
I think he's quite busy.
Ask a busy person.
Yeah. But I think for me, it's just a simple thing, asking, are you happy? And it's a very interesting question we ask in meetings, because you can tell when lots of people aren't that happy.
Happy.
And it's, it's slightly pointless if you're not happy, and just so difficult for those around you too.
I remember I had a moment, and it would have been on my Nuffield travels, but where I realised the only person you can change is yourself. You can't change anyone else. You can only change yourself. And so, I mean, I put that to my family, and I said, right, I want some 360 feedback here. I said, don't give me too much, because I don't want to get whacked over the head, but I am interested in getting better. And this whole idea of self-leadership is really important, because ultimately you can only change yourself. And so start with yourself. It's a good place. Work out and get yourself a bit better.
Did they listen to the bit about being not too aggressive with the feedback? Did they, or were they quite mean?
No, I said it that I wanted nice constructive feedback is the word I think you're looking for. But I know, and you go on. There's certainly these courses they pointed out, but I don't get to the point. This is my problem. I waffle too much. Farmers like to tell a story. We like to. If we have more 5-bar gates, we'd all be on the gate telling a story. Whereas, you've now got to get to the point. And certainly my interview for this role, star format. This is the situation. This is the task I had to do. These are the actions I took. And as a result, this was it, star format, talking in a different way, getting to the point. I mean, I'm learning lots. So just a quick thing. So then we're about to go. Something I said at the the Lincolnshire Farming Conference last week, just as something that everybody can do, because we don't have to go on a course to do stuff. You can still be interested. And I spoke about, somebody told me, John Tanner, he runs Agravista, and he invited me for coffee, and he told me about this thing called 100 Coffees, and he said, go and ring somebody up or email them and say, I'm doing this thing called 100 Coffees. I want to engage with people. I'd love to come and meet you. Would you have a coffee with me? Tell me a little bit about what you do. And you go and have a coffee with somebody. And when you finish having a coffee, you say, right, who do you suggest I should talk to now about X, Y, and Z? And you'll be amazed at where you can get to within people's, because they don't give you their worst person. They don't give you their least inspiring person when you go and meet somebody inspiring. They give you somebody incredible. And then you go and get them to introduce you to them. So you get in the door. God, and so soon you can start to get an interest and a different perspective in lots of different ways, and start learning lots of stuff without. There's your next book, Liz. 100 Coffees, Liz Genever.
Well, she is on a book already.
Here we go.
See, I've told him now
I'm meant to be on transformational change of my family farm, so I think I might need to have your course, and then I can write about it in my book. See, it's all about ProLab now.
Here we go. Brilliant.
Thank you for listening to the ReGen Ag podcast. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Tim Nicholson from Cactus Tree Guards, Renault for the music, and Pete Ord, the podcast wizard from the studio at Sunbeams, part of the Annie Mawson Sunbeams Music Trust. See you next time.